Welcome to the Supply Chain Revolution podcast. I'm your host, Sherry Heinisch, also called the Supply Chain Queen, joined by co-host James George. Our guest, Sandra, head of sustainability for CHEP Americas, part of Brambles, the world's largest circular asset pooling company, is going to bring an extraordinary blend of experience from leading transformation at Amazon, managing sustainability across 40,000 suppliers, and contributing to building the first sustainability hub for Amazon's 2.5 million selling partners. She's also a TEDx speaker, wiser pioneer, and top voice on LinkedIn in sustainability. We are so excited to explore how a circular distribution infrastructure can actually be the backbone for regenerative supply chains and regenerative communities. Sandy!
Good afternoon. Good morning.
How are you?
I am good. How are you?
Good. I've had a few busy weeks, but I'm seeing the light at the end of the tunnel, which feels so nice.
I've been really looking forward to this conversation because when I joined the MacArthur Foundation, our first acceleration workshop, I met two of your European colleagues, and this was back in like 2017, 2018.
Oh.
And I've stayed in touch with them ever since. So Marianne Richoux and Juan Jose Frijo, this was one of the first examples of circular economy in action that I got my teeth into
Yay!
kind of back in the day. So I'm incredibly excited to see how it's going, right? Because you guys were one of the first to try and kind of pioneer this idea of circular assets when we think about cross-border movement of goods. This sort of idea of what are the barriers and the problems when it goes from one country to the other. So how is this pooling model going? How has it fundamentally changed and shifted? How's it creating kind of distributed infrastructure when we think about how we move stuff across border?
Well, more than cross-border, when we think about what has happened lately, like after COVID-19, there were a lot of tendencies for localization of supply chains. So it was all about like making stronger domestic markets. And I think that that's something that CHEP and Brambles excel at. And particularly for us, it's very important to keep updated. It's not only relevant to have a circular supply chain, but how you keep updating the system, keep giving analytics to the customer in a way that they can adapt to the current market trends that right now everything is demanding us for traceability. So that's one of like the biggest things that we've been capitalizing on and doing investments in becoming the first regenerative supply chain, which is something that I'm very excited about.
Yay! We are too. That's why we're here.
Let's hear about it, right? Like when you think about that regenerative supply chain, what has been the step? Sorry, question behind the question, right? It feels like there's always a lot of resistance to kind of some of these models because, well, that's not how we've done it before. Mm-hmm. It's going to be too difficult to change. You're dealing with cross-jurisdictional kind of responsibility. How have you got to that kind of concept of a regenerative model?
Well, I guess that what gets backlash in general are the headlines when we think about sustainability, but no one is against efficiency, resilience, business continuity, and that's the beauty of that. How can you create a system that's integrated into operations and works smoothly, that you don't even notice that there's a circular supply chain behind what you do? And that's what fascinates me every day, because they look for ways in which they rethink the way that they source their commodities, in which they serve the customers, they provide the insights, and it's something extremely fascinating to witness every day within my role.
And so I have a question, Sandy, and you and I have met and we had the privilege of watching Paul Polman together at New York Climate Week, which was such a thrill. The question I have is more around the underpinning technology innovation. You mentioned data and analytics. I believe that that's a key part of bringing regenerative supply chain and communities to life.
It's extremely relevant because right now what technology enables is, first of all, traceability. Second, it enables you to have this collaborative structure. When you have data, when you have granularity and visibility, now you're able to take decisions in conjunction with your customers and the stakeholders that you partner with. And particularly, it informs every decision for design. Like, how can you be iterating on this system and make it more efficient every loop or every new partnership with the customer? And when I think about like my previous experience, for example, in Amazon, in the Matic, then you grow this to like not limiting to first mile, middle mile, but also last last mile, making sure that all of these systems become compatible and that you form, again, like this smooth customer experience throughout the entire value chain.
I heard systems. I heard optimization. How important is AI and agentic where you're able to actually automate, even if the human is still in the loop in terms of final outcome or decision orchestration? How is AI also?
I totally agree with you. And the best use of AI is when you find that combination between processing the data. At the end of the day, human input in order to make sure that the data that you're analyzing, the quality of it makes sense, right? Because if you start with a chunk of data that's not reviewed by anyone, then you're going to take decisions and assumptions based on things that are not as solid or that cannot actually create an actionable insight for you.
I mean,
Wonderful.
can I fly the flag for the person in that, the human in that? Because I think, you know, the sort of AI and data is really, really important. But I guess what is the role that communities play in the setup then? You know, you mentioned there about kind of with the collection, but presumably that's as important when we think about that interoperability between different organizations.
Yeah, exactly. And think about repairability of the assets. Now you need to start with thinking the way in which you have local hubs instead of centralized access to repair your assets. I mean, beyond that, it can be a way in which when we talk about regenerative supply chains, from the very decision of the sourcing, how you're taking steps to be able to give back more than you take. And to give you an example of this, the 2020 to 2025 sustainability strategy from Brambles aimed to restore 2 trees for everyone needed for their resource needs. But now that the topic of biodiversity is evolving, that we're thinking at an ecosystem level, at a community impact level, we're changing from units to area, hectares. So in that way, we can evaluate the impacts that we have on biodiversity, water, and specifically for the communities, the way in which we are creating employment, developing skills that are forestry related.
In 2025, that's quite a progressive mindset to take. I'm curious, and I think I kind of partially already know the answer to this, but how do you then sell that internally from an economic standpoint, right? What is the sort of return on investment from the example of planting 2 trees for everyone that's utilized? I think there's a clear argument out there in the market for why that's quite a low level thing to do. But when you think about the ecosystem level and think about nature-based solutions and biodiversity, that almost feels complex, and with complexity comes cost.
Yeah.
So how do you sell that message back up into the higher echelons?
Well, actually, it's a very simple answer. It makes business sense because when we think about our assets, they are made of 100% deforestation-free timber, and that's a premium by itself. When we see that's the stats on how many certified forests we have in the world, then becomes a question and a conversation about demand, right? So how do you ensure demand and avoid at the same time cost volatility within a premium? You create your own source, right? And how do you create that in countries that logistically make sense, that reduce the long haul distances that you need in order to create the new assets or to manufacture the new assets? And then that at the end of the day is a matter of business continuity. And the other answer to this question is I've never seen a company, and this is more like Sandy removing my hat of CHEP Brambles, but I've never seen sustainability so embedded into the business model. And something that shocked me is that you mentioned that you got to know JJ. So JJ is our Chief Sustainability Officer, but this year he started to be the Chief Product Innovation Officer. Normally it is the other way around, like people with these other functions like CFOs, COOs get the sustainability responsibility.
I've seen several CSOs or the senior most sustainability executive have these new emerging hybrid roles where they're combining R&D, product, technology or innovation. Shout out to Rosbe, who is the Vice President of Sustainability Performance Management. And it's a role that sits in between the CSO and the CIO, which I think is super cool. I can think of a couple fashion brands who've also blended that CSO role and the Chief Supply Chain Officer role. When you think about supplier sustainability, how critical that is, they just said, hey, wouldn't it be neat if we just merge these 2 roles and to make it more holistic and comprehensive at the same time? My question, Sandy, are you evolving beyond the timber or wood-based product to offer alternatives as you think through some of the impending regulation coming out of the EU?
Yeah, and there's a very interesting business that we have. It's called Palicon, which is crates and containers, and it's for liquids and for food. So basically, right now with EPR, this is becoming a very interesting conversation about how can we help customers, because it goes beyond the pallet. How can we use the infrastructure to enable more solutions? So I guess that one of the things that we're very open is to partner with industry-wide organizations into finding new solutions that solve the challenges.
Yeah, it's interesting because you have the infrastructure and you have the access, and you're definitely housing the content or the materials, the product itself. So that enhanced analytics layer, I would imagine, is extremely valuable to a lot of big brands. If you close your eyes, what's your vision about how a circular distribution infrastructure could actually translate into creating regenerative communities?
I think that it is about creating a new blueprint on how we imagine logistics. How can we make that data accessible in order to actually invest where it matters the most? I find fascinating within CHEP and Brambles that they force companies to rethink ownership and access. Can we have infrastructure as a service when it comes to logistics? And if we adopt that mindset, how can we do more projects together on reducing empty miles, on working with different suppliers when it comes to transportation and pilot alternative fuels, but more as a type of partnership perspective. And last but not least, when it comes to all the disposal, can we create like these innovation hubs? When I think about the amount of electronic waste that we are creating as a society right now, we only have the infrastructure to dispose 1 out of 5 devices that we use and manufacture today. So what's going to happen in 10 years? Like, all of this is evolving exponentially. Can this be done for other types of commodities as well, for the fashion industry? Like, we need to rethink end to end the way that we source, distribute, and also dispose the things that we interact every day with.
I mean, that's fascinating, right? This sort of idea of, and what you described there is sort of decentralizing logistics, right? This idea of logistics as a service, and actually it's the infrastructure the stuff runs on rather than us worrying about who owns that pallet or that distribution center. I've seen a lot of companies are all trying to solve this in isolation. And obviously we're always greater than the sum of our parts. So how do we set that up? But I'm curious to build on Sherry's point. 2025, halfway through a decade of action, it's fair to say we're not as far down the road as we are expecting to be at this point. We're seeing companies sort of start to tighten their belts a little bit on this agenda. What's the big unlock for you in 2026? If you had a magic wand, if you had an ability to say, no, that needs to be true in order for us to progress, what would that be? What is the thing that's stopping you progressing to that next stage of a circular regenerative supply chain?
I mean, I honestly don't feel that anything is stopping us. I just feel that, of course, there's always this balance between
Love that.
there's always this balance between like the market being ready and just coming in with solutions that can be scaled. Like, we don't want to start doing projects that are not going to have a future. Like, everything is very strategic. The reason that they support sustainability is because it is very intentional. So more than what I think that's stopping us is a matter of what has the best chances to create the best impact within the next 2 to 5 years. What can actually show tangible results to others to follow. I think that I had this conversation before, but let's say like about competition, about these market signals. This is in our favor at the end of the day, because it's showing that we're doing the right thing and that we are betting in the right places in order to develop the business and at the same time deliver to customers, and how brands and retailers are rethinking the way that they move essential goods. So, yeah.
There's the mic drop, Sherry. Nothing's getting in the way. This is what we get to next. There you go.
I was going to say that there will always be a reason that someone can find or throw stones. Do it anyway. And when's the best time to start? James, you've said it on previous episodes. Start now.
Well,
start now.
Yeah, the best time is start 20 years ago, but then the next best time is start now. Yeah, exactly.
Start now. Just do it. Sandy, this has been such a joy. You have a great energy. I think it's also, when we think about the 10 big ideas to transform supply chains into something beautiful, into something regenerative, The shift that we've opened with, the linear economy, take, make, dispose, it's something that still exists, and I'm not naive in terms of the cost, political, geopolitical risks that a lot of folks are facing right now in our industry. But the vision that you've painted around sharing, reusing, thinking about the community context and how we can use an infrastructure that already exists for exactly the kind of systems level transformation that we really need for longer term value. Last question, force for regeneration. Who would you need as a partner? Who are key partners that bring it to life?
Well, my answer is it is not limited to one industry at the end of the day. I do think that we can create regenerative projects with actors from completely different industries, just finding a common ground in how actual social and environmental transformation looks like. However, it would be with someone that has the same ambition and the same intention of restoring ecosystems. Because at the end of the day, what we want to do is to partner with organizations that are bringing in civil society, government, the local communities itself in order to create projects that preserve, right?
James, take us home.
I mean, it's a fascinating topic, right? Like, as we think about how do we just move stuff around the globe and how do we do it in the best possible way? But I love the fact that in this, Sandy, two takeaways for me there isn't a problem. We've just got to get on and do it. And you've just been incredibly clear on the type of partner you need. So if that's not a kind of market signal to say, hang on, we're here to try and push this agenda, but you've got to get on the same page, I don't know what is. So no, I really appreciate sort of hearing your perspective on it.
No, thank you. Thank you so much for having me. I was very excited because, I mean, Sherry, I told you when I met you in person, I was just a fan of this podcast. If you're seeing this and you haven't watched the past episodes, they have a wealth of knowledge. They can explain you the difference between responsible sourcing, regenerative supply chains, net positive impact. So I think that this is the best way in which people can learn and understand better how they can make a difference in the different stages that they're working on right now in sustainability. And every one of us has a part of it.
Oh, thank you so much,
amazing.
Sandy. It's always cool when we get to meet people in real life. I feel like I've met so many people through digital platforms, and then it could be like 5 years. It could be, we're not going to talk about COVID, but COVID, when you finally met someone in real life, you were like, oh my gosh, give me a hug.
Yeah.
So Sandy and I had that moment. And by the way, I made it to get my SDG pin. I'm not wearing it today, but I made it to Fifth Avenue. Yeah, super cool. Thank you so much for joining. I'm going to cut that out. That part. Maybe I'll leave it in. I don't know.
Sherry, it is like the best secret kept.
Yeah, I bought several. I'm going to be Mrs. Santa Claus and send it to people who I know. Really just, they wake up, live, breathe, eat, sleep, sustainable development. It's a perfect time as well as COP30 is happening right now, several thousand miles away from where I am, where James is. So really appreciate you taking the time to share, Sandy.
No, thank you so much for having me.